So, and away we go. Here's Ray. I'm the Ray part of the Simo Ray English Language Productions. And with me today I've got Simo. How you doing, Simo?
I'm good, Ray. Yourself?
Oh, pretty fair, thanks. Okay, we're going to continue today with questions and answers in our Fly on the Wall series, where you get to listen to two native English speakers talking about controversial subjects. Remember, these are not scripted. These questions, etc., are all spontaneous, just like we expect our students to be, answering spontaneously. Have a look at our contact details here, and if you would like to know more about what you see and hear today, or more about how you can get more of this type of situation, contact us at one of these addresses. We'll probably include on your CD later on the cover, we'll be able to show you our blog address and our web address. As yet we haven't done it, so hang in there for this. Okay, here we go. We're going to be today talking about capital punishment, but just to remind you, presentations in this series, in the Fly on the Wall series, see the flies I put on there?
Yeah, they look pretty good, I reckon, right?
Yeah, presentation in this series are completely unrehearsed, so that our students get an authentic experience of off-the-cuff discussion, as it would be if you'd listen to two old farts talking in a park somewhere, right? They're spontaneous spoken answers, just as we expect of our students in a classroom. So listen carefully, as this is English as it is really spoken. This is not sanitized English out of a textbook. Are you ready to go? All right, here we are, the discussion series on capital punishment.
You ready to answer a few questions there, Ray?
Oh, I certainly am, Simo. What have you got for me today?
Let's go with this first picture here. What is the difference between capital punishment and corporal punishment, Ray?
Well, capital punishment means putting somebody to death, and corporal punishments means doing something that is going to harm or hurt the body. Look at these sailors, will you? Look at that. They're doing the walking the plank caper, right?
Back in these days, it was very barbaric world, I
Oh,
believe.
it was. I mean, you know, we like to think that people like from Britain, etc., wouldn't do barbaric things, but wow, how do you think they conquered the world?
Well, stuff like this, photos like this tells the story, Ray.
It sure does, yeah.
Is corporal punishment acceptable for some crimes? Example, in some Muslim countries, the hands are cut off the thief.
Oh, right, yes. I don't know, it's a very debatable point, isn't it? I feel that it could be a very good deterrent against some sorts of crimes, and you know, I always get frustrated about people who, for example, thieves or burglars who come into your house and they steal things from your house, they invade your house, but if you touch them, you're up for assault.
Oh, that's a crazy law. I like the law we have here in Vietnam, where if you catch a burglar or a thief in your house or on your premises, you can harm him in any way you want and hold him until the police get there. Now, why isn't that worldwide? That would be a deterrent, Ray, I believe.
I believe so too. But anyway, getting back to the corporal punishment, in some Muslim countries, as you say, you know, corporal punishment is used. For example, we see here a picture of a man. He's using, or it's difficult to see it, but he's using what's called a rotan, which is a cane, and he is flogging this prisoner on a special flogging rack. And I lived in Malaysia, as you did too, for a little while, and that law is definitely part of the whole shebang. There, you can be flogged with the cane. The cane is it sounds like, you know, it sounds like quite a minor thing to be hit with get 6 strokes of the cane, but they reckon 6 strokes is almost a death sentence for most people.
With this type of cane, it is. When I was at primary school and high school in Australia years and years ago, if we got the cane, which we called the cuts, we got a maximum of 6 on each hand. This cane is not in any way similar to the ones they used to use in schools.
Oh no, it's not. It's a rather disastrous sort of a thing. But anyway, corporal punishment. You know, in Muslim countries, for example, spies get their eyes put out.
And that's if they're lucky, Ray.
Yes, and you know, people who gossip get their tongue cut out. A servant running away from his master will get his foot cut off. You wouldn't want to be a rapist, would you?
It's definitely not right. You think it is okay to use corporal punishment in schools?
I think with limitations, yes, it is. There's some private schools, for example, in my country in Australia, where it's part of the condition of enrolling your child in there. You accept the fact that the school will administer corporal punishment. If you don't agree with it, the story is don't send your kid here.
Is that how it is today still?
Oh yes, it is. It is. There are some
okay.
private schools that they're still proud of the fact that they administer corporal punishment. However, in the state-run schools, it's definitely not allowed. In Vietnam, where I live now. It's also not allowed. However, it's not likely that a teacher is going to be brought to account in Vietnam if he does. My own views on this are that I think there is a place for corporal punishment in schools, particularly for badly behaved students. I don't think for poor academic success it should be used, because that's not a behavioural problem. But as a behavioural problem, I believe that the schools should be able to call the parents and encourage corporal punishment or some sort of parental restriction. To a point, I think it's okay. Depends on what we're talking about as corporal punishment, of course.
Well,
the picture where these guys are smacking this boy's bare bottom with a cane, no, I don't
Definitely
agree.
not.
I don't agree.
Now, I would say in Australia, it would be classed as assault if a teacher.
I think it would.
Tried to use this punishment.
I think so too.
Do you agree with capital punishment, Ray?
Yes, I do. I do. I believe there are certain crimes for which people should be put to death because they're a menace to society. Why should my taxpayer money be used to keep this person alive and in comfort? Because some of the prisons for example, in Australia are not exactly what we would call an unhealthy sort of an environment to be in. They're not that bad, as compared to some other prisons. Look at this guy here. These are all capital punishment Oriental style. The first guy is arranging a beheading for himself. Second guy is doing harikiri. He's pulling out his own bowels. And in the third picture, there's a group of Japanese men. I guess they're Japanese, performing an execution. Once he's started his harikiri and he's got to a point where he feels he's ready, he's going to say "Oi," and that guy's going to cut his head off.
So you were saying you don't think there's any chance of rehabilitation for these people?
I think somebody who commits a terribly cruel crime, for example, against a child or against a woman, someone who is in a less strong, in a weaker position than him or her, I think those sorts of people are probably likely to re-offend. And I don't think that life imprisonment, for example, is an option for them. They should be removed from society. They're like, what do you do with a dog that bites people? You either keep it well away, or you get rid of it.
That's a good example, Ray, you just said there about the dog.
Mm.
Do you think the offender or the criminal should be given a choice between death and life imprisonment?
Well, one's going to cost the state a lot of money. The execution is all over with a few $100s maybe. Keeping him alive is going to cost $60,000 a year.
And the poor victim didn't have a choice, did they?
No, they had no choice.
For what crimes? Sorry, Ray. For what crimes do you think punishment should be enforced?
I think punishment should be enforced for all crimes. You mean capital punishment?
Capital punishment. Sorry, Ray. Yes.
That's all right. As I said before, particularly cruel crimes or killing somebody in a particularly cruel manner, what we might call the heinous crimes. I believe it should be. It should be. Some crimes in some countries, the capital punishment is probably a little bit too severe. For example, in Indonesia, if you bring marijuana into Indonesia, you could be looking at a death sentence. I think that's not that person is probably not necessarily dangerous. So I think that's a bit over the top. In Vietnam, for example, policemen dealing drugs will be executed. That's probably a bit over the top too. But certainly for what we might call the heinous crimes, killing children in a cruel way, killing anybody in a cruel way, like those guys in India, those 5 or 6 guys who raped this girl on a bus and she eventually died. The police are seeking the death penalty, and I believe quite rightly so.
I believe so too, Ray, with that particular case. Should political crime carry the death penalty, Ray?
Well, I guess the thing is, ultimately the higher ups in the government are ultimately responsible for the way that their people, their soldiers, etc., behave. It's very difficult to prove, for example, that these 2 guys in the picture, for let's say Adolf Hitler, was he directly involved, or did he give any direct orders about any of this? Very debatable. We don't know, but ultimately he and his friend there, Mussolini, probably were aware of what was going on and did nothing to prevent it. I mean, all that is. Who was it? The famous guy said, "All that needs for evil to succeed is for good men to do nothing." Now, I don't know whether these people were probably good in some respects or not, and we can point to various things that they did would probably were of benefit to their country. However, the fact that they lost the war is probably a big motivator. Unfortunately, it's the winners who make the law. Also, there seems to be quite a lot of evidence that such people either had a hand in, or sat back and did nothing while they allowed some heinous types of things to happen, and ultimately they are responsible for the actions of their fellow countrymen because they're the leaders. So I don't think imposing the death penalty on people like that is out of place.
No, well, see, Adolf Hitler was blinded because of his chronic hatred of the Jews. So he actually, in his own mindset, didn't think he was doing anything wrong. He just thought he was getting rid of the poison and the toxin in his country. So he was blinded by hatred. Well,
yes, he did. Well, he had some good reason to think so. However, he went too far with it.
He certainly did.
I mean, it wasn't only Jews he didn't like, but anyway.
What is the history of capital punishment in our country, Ray?
In Australia, you mean? Yeah. Well, we don't have a long history of any damn thing, but we do. There has been a history of capital punishment. When Australia was first settled, for example, it was only about the late 1700s that it happened. A lot of the people who came there were actually prisoners of the Queen, and it was common for the Brits to control these prisoners with the threat of capital punishment, and they applied their right quite freely, and until for quite some years after, while the British still ruled Australia, it was quite common for common criminals to be hanged or suffer the death penalty in some way. Of course, going back to the European heritage, would tell me very much, as we see some of these pictures here, they've had a long history of torturous death, by capital punishment by torturous death.
What's in this first picture, Ray? What's happening here? Is that a rack?
I think that's some sort of a rack. I think she's she's being cooked. I see coals in the corner, so I think this poor woman is being cooked.
Oh, what a way to go.
Barbecued witch. Yeah, pretty damn awful, isn't it, eh?
Like I said in the beginning of this segment, very barbaric history of human beings, Ray.
Well, some people seem to think that Europeans are not barbaric, but they are, or they were.
For what crimes can a person be executed, Ray?
Oh, in Australia, I think execution has stopped. The last one was in the 1950s, and that was a hanging. So now there are no crimes in Australia for which a person can be executed. In some countries, you can be executed for lesser crimes than murder, but generally speaking, it's murder or the heinous crimes, that you could be executed for.
Well, in America, they probably have a execution once a week.
Oh, I don't think it's quite that frequently, but strangely enough, they are one of the few Western countries that have not completely done away with execution.
What happens in a situation when a government wrongly executes a person, Ray?
Oops, sorry. Yeah, well, there's not much they can do, is there? They can obviously give the person a pardon after he's died, a posthumous pardon, which clears the guy's name. But that's not of much use to him because he's already departed for the great beyond. But for his family, that might bring some sort of closure to their agony. They may be able to compensate the family for something because, by their wrongdoing, by their not being careful, someone's lost a father, a brother, or a son. I think this probably happened with enough frequency to be a bit of a bother in the past, but with investigative techniques these days, I think it's not very likely that the police are going to get the wrong person, although, it certainly could happen. But, I think the best they can do is say, I'm sorry.
And financially compensate the family as well.
How much do you need to compensate? It's very difficult, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Is the death penalty a deterrent to violent crime, you think, Ray?
I think for the average person it certainly is. If I knew by doing such and such a thing I would probably be put to death if I was caught, I think it would make me think twice about it. Of course, there are some people where life doesn't mean very much to them, and there's a number of cases where people were well aware that if they were caught they would probably be put to death, but they still continued to do the crime. So it's very debatable whether it really is a deterrent to the types of people who are prepared to go to these lengths with their crime.
Yes, I think in probably 85% of the cases that the death penalty would be a deterrent.
Oh yeah. I mean, nobody wants to end their life early.
What different methods are there of applying the death penalty, Ray?
Oh, human beings seem to be pretty good at this. We've developed some incredible ways of killing people. Well, first of all, probably the most widespread throughout the world is shooting. A lot of countries have death by firing squad, including right here in Vietnam. I actually witnessed a public execution in Vietnam when I first came here, and 3 policemen using pistols. They tell me that one of them was unloaded, but none of the 3 policemen knew which one was not loaded with a real bullet. It was a pretty horrendous affair. Okay, so there's that. There's a beheading. You cut off the head. The French still apparently use the guillotine. Well, they had until recently. I think the death penalty has been abolished in France. As we can see here are some British people. I gather they're British because I can see a soldier in the background with the British lion on his chest. They are burning a witch or somebody they claim to be a witch, just burning her to death, putting her on the fire and wait until she dies. There's various ways of torture. In the medieval times, it was quite common to tie a prisoner up and slit a hole in his stomach and start to pull his bowels out, wind them out, called winding, rather gruesome way. There's also putting the rat in the cage and putting the coal on top of the cage, pulling the bottom open, putting it on the prisoner's stomach and watching the rat eat his way out.
Oh, how barbaric can you get?
Oh, no, you can't get much more barbaric than the Europeans, mate. I mean, we often tend to think that Asians have very barbaric ways. I think they probably learnt most of them from Europeans. Of course, then there's hanging, wearing the old rope necktie. In some countries there's waterboarding, which means you are drowned to death. Garrotting, which was very popular in Italy, which is strangulation at a post. And then of course there's crucifixion, which the Romans used to use and which the Nazis used in the Second World War as well. Oh, there are so many ways we can put people to death. Some of them are very cruel. Probably the most humane development in executions has been the lethal injection.
Yes.
It's, because they're able to pacify the victim, if you like, the prisoner, by doping him up before the actual poison goes into his system. So there's a lot of ways. There's a lot we could do.
Should death row prisoners be given the meal of their choice before they are executed, Ray?
It seems to me to be a waste of time and effort and money. However, it's the last pleasure this poor person is probably ever going to have. I'm not against the idea. I'm not against the idea. However, I think it's a bit trivial. If the other prisoners are having pies and peas, why does this guy have to have something different just because he's going to die in a few hours' time?
Well, he did commit a crime with that the death sentence charge applied to it, so he knew what he was doing. So I don't believe they should have a last meal of their choice. Myself, personally.
No, I think he needs to walk that last few steps with his conscience heavy, not with "Wow, I've had a good meal, aren't I? Feeling happy." No, let him be a little bit miserable,
What do you think is the most humane method of execution?
I think the most humane method is, as I mentioned before, the lethal injection, simply because the prisoner is sedated first, so that he doesn't really know what's going on. As a matter of fact, he's as high as a kite. He's pumped full of morphine and opium, and then the poison is injected when they're well aware that he's completely left the planet brain-wise. He probably feels absolutely no pain whatsoever. He just doesn't wake up again.
Yes.
Like putting a dog down, isn't it, I guess? Whoops, so what happened here? We went too far. Let me just see what's going on. Okay, yeah.
Do you think victims' families get a sense of closure knowing a killer has been executed?
Well, nothing's ever going to bring the victim back. But I guess the fact that we know that the person responsible for this has been caught, has received the maximum that he can receive by the law as far as punishment is concerned, probably makes people feel, well, there's nothing more I can do now, so leave it alone. I would think so. I would think that it would put an end to the worry and concern, because while the prisoner is still sitting in prison, those people are probably thinking, my loved one's gone, why is he still allowed to keep his life? So I imagine, knowing that your family member has been avenged in the only way that can be applied, it probably does make you feel it's over now.
And there's no way possible that that person can hurt or harm another person, Ray.
Well, that's right. He's not going to hurt anybody else now. He's dead. Yeah.
What do you think? Should the death penalty be applied to mentally disabled people, Ray?
No, I don't. I think these people have no understanding of the severity of what they've done. They generally don't are not able to match cause and effect. That's why. So we have to be very careful, of course, that this person really is mentally disabled. So I don't think, because this person is not really sure of what he did or she did, I think it's unfair to put this person to death. Whilst this person might be a threat to society, there are other alternatives.
What are the other alternatives, Ray?
Well, unfortunately, I don't like the idea that the state should have to use my taxpayer money to fund looking after people. However, in this case, this person is sick. I think we do have an obligation to take care of sick people. With that being said, I think that people who are likely to do this and who are mentally disturbed, there's little possibility that they will ever be rehabilitated. So I think they have to live in a secure environment for the rest of their natural life. So I believe they should be kept close to the chest, shall we say, for the rest of their lives, to ensure that they don't reoffend in some way.
Mm-hmm. What do you think the executioner feels, Ray?
Well, I would not like to be the executioner. I think the executioner has to develop a certain mindset. If he or she gets too worried about this, he or she's not going to be able to do the job, and is certainly going to go crazy. I think we have to start getting the mindset that this is my job. This person has done something really bad, and I'm proud to help the world be rid of this evil thing which is causing our society problems. I think that's the only way we can feel. I think the executioner cannot afford to feel sympathy for the prisoner.
Yeah, I believe in that too, Ray.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think he or she feels like a murderer?
I think that would certainly enter the executioner's mind, but there has been. There should have been rather extensive investigation to ensure that this is definitely a bad person that the society doesn't need anymore. And the executioner is working under a court order, so therefore I don't think he or she needs to feel like a murderer. No, I don't think so.
They're only following orders.
They are.
How will you feel if this was your job, being the executioner, Ray?
I wouldn't like it. However, I think, like I said before, I would just consider it my job.
Your duty to the country?
My duty to the country, maybe, my duty to my fellow citizen, and hope that I had done the right thing. Of course, if we revert back to if it was the wrong guy, well, that's a whole different set of circumstances, and my mental attitude might just blow out on that,
Do you think capital punishment is actually murder, Ray?
No, I don't, because it's been decided that this is like this prisoner is sort of a mad dog in our mob of dogs, shall we say?
That's a good way of putting it, actually, Ray.
Yeah, I mean, we don't think twice about shooting a mad dog.
No.
We just say, well, it's for the good of all the other dogs around. It's good for the people around. I think there are unfortunately some people in our society that our society can do better without. And in this case, when we've got to the point where it's a court ordered, that is, that the government has said this person needs to be removed from our society, I don't unless we're going to put him in a rowboat and put him out on an island where he'll never escape, I think this is the only viable alternative, because locking him up is going to cost too much money for the rest of his life. Which
is worse, life imprisonment or the death penalty, Ray?
This is going to depend very much on where the life imprisonment is going to be. If I was offered the choice and I lived in Australia, for example, I would take life imprisonment. I would choose life imprisonment simply because life imprisonment in prisons in Australia is not too difficult. The only thing you're losing is your freedom, but you will have a room to yourself. You'll probably have TV, access to internet, a mobile phone if you want it. Visitors can come whenever they like. Your wife can even come and have an evening of connubial bliss with you from time to time if you wish. So it's not exactly that bad.
That's in our country.
In our country. Now, if I was offered that or life imprisonment in Vietnam, I would definitely take capital punishment, because the conditions are very, very different. So it's going to depend where the life imprisonment is going to be. There's a TV program sometimes we see on National Geographic or Discovery Channel, I don't know which it is, Locked Up Abroad, and we see some of the conditions in prisons in some countries, and it's pretty obvious that life imprisonment would be a life of misery. So you might as well end it,
Yes. Why do many Christian countries have the death penalty when the Bible says, "Thou shalt not kill"?
Okay, right. This is a bit close to my heart in places. Unfortunately, if we look through the Bible, you will find that prior to the coming of Jesus Christ and the New Testament, the rule by the Christian God, or who was the God before the Christians came along, was something like a police state. And it was full of killings and maimings and torture. So I think what happens is a lot of the Christian countries, they take this on board, and they believe that putting someone to death is not necessarily a bad thing. Let's have a look at, for example, the picture here. We see a crusader. He's killing people in the name of God. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, I'm sure any real God would not condone such a thing. Mm-hmm. So why they actually do that, I don't know. I can only say it is because they're hypocrites.
Yes. I'd have to agree with you there, Ray. Mm. What do you think is the most humane way to put someone to death?
Well, as we can see, this lady is being tickled to death. She's laughing all the way to the pearly gates. I mean, I've never heard of anyone being tickled to death. Mm. Although I guess some of the tortures that they would have had in the medieval days could have been like this.
Yeah, maybe.
I have heard. Actually, I have heard of people being tickled to death. Yes, there are kings in Europe who ordered people to be tickled until they died laughing, and it has happened. I don't think that's a humane way. As I said earlier, I think the lethal injection is probably the best.
Oh yes, I agree with you there too, Ray. Do you think the victims' families should be able to choose the method of execution?
Within limits. Within limits. I mean, you know, we would have the horrible situation where if the court said, how would you like this prisoner to be put to death? You know, we might say stoning, or we might say crushing, or we might say by being chopped up into little pieces, one piece at a day per day until he dies. So within limits, I think, you know, I think it's the victim's family's right to be able to choose the method of execution from a list of reasonably humane ones. Mm. So, you know, they might be limited to something like shooting, hanging, death by injection, whatever. So long as they're reasonably humane, you know, I don't think, you know, like in this guy, he's thinking about, I wish this guy would get his head pressed until his brains popped out. No, I don't think that's necessary. You know, in Russia, for example, in the Soviet days, prisoners were often given a choice: the death penalty or working in the uranium mines.
Which is a death penalty.
Well, in most cases, of course, that was a death penalty. Mm. So I think, you know, along those sorts of lines, it's probably okay to suggest that the victim's family should have some choice. Whoops.
If execution is unacceptable, what is the alternative?
Well, we could probably look at lifetime slavery, which did happen a lot in the olden days. Like in the, you know, we know now from Roman times, Greek times, etc. People were bonded to eternal slavery till the day they died for certain crimes. And in Rome, in fact, you know, when the gladiatorial games became very popular, that was an alternative for violent criminals. You know, the death penalty or the gladiator ring. You may be able to survive it and escape. Mm-hmm. You might be bought out of it or something like that. So I think there have been alternatives in this modern day and age. Of course, as I mentioned, in the Soviet times, in the gulags, people were sent into dangerous jobs. Mm-hmm. If they happened to survive, they were lucky, and they were set free. Most of them didn't survive, of course, or they got sick later from exposure to these bad things, or just too much hard work. In this picture here, for example, we can see the chain gang, where in America, particularly in the 20s and 30s, prisoners were forced to work. Do you think prisoners should be forced to work to pay for some of their upkeep?
Depending on the crime, for sure, Ray. I definitely think they should have to work for throughout their their
incarceration.
sentence.
Yeah. I've actually seen a chain gang here in Vietnam. When I was down in the Mekong Delta one time, I saw some guys out in the hot sun chained together, and they were slashing grass, and there were people walking up and down with Kalashnikovs, and you know, you wouldn't like to be working out there. It's difficult circumstances. I think yes, they should be forced to work. Depending, you know, I mean, you wouldn't want people who are sick or too old to have to do this. But anyway.
What does capital mean in capital punishment, right?
Well, capital comes from our Latin. Capitis means the head. It means to cut off the head, right? In other words, you know, if you cut off your head, you're going to be killed. You're dead. So capital means cut off the head, and therefore it being related to death. So capital means to kill.
For other crimes, should the offending body part be cut off or out?
Well, Muslims seem to think so. For example, we talked about that before. You cut out the tongue for gossiping, stealing, cut off the hands, spying, take out the eyes, and for a rapist, well, okay, whatever.
Should the general public be allowed to look at these executions, Ray?
I think they're a pretty gruesome deal. I don't think so. I mean, I know governments who are trying to enforce their will on the people would like that to happen, because they want people to see, well, you know, you misbehave, this is what's going to happen, this could happen to you. But basically I don't think it's a public spectacle, really. It's a bit of a private thing, really, isn't it?
Should family members of the criminal be forced to attend his or her execution?
No, I don't think so. I think this would be quite disturbing. I would like, you know, if I was going to be executed, I really don't want my little boy to be there, to be forced to be there to see his dad executed. That would be, that would break my heart. And I'm sure the intention is not to make other members of the family also anti-government. Surely.
Should the executed person's family be made to be paid for the cost of the execution?
Debatable. I don't think the governments in most places are that poor that they really need that. They've made the decision to execute this person. I think they have to bear the costs.
Yes, I don't think the family is responsible for what their siblings have done anyway, Ray.
No,
in most cases.
I mean, we are talking rather minor sort of money, you know. I mean, how much does it cost to set up a platform and a bit of rope to hang somebody? It's not a lot.
And the needles wouldn't be expensive either, Ray.
Oh, surely not. You know, a couple of $100 would probably cover the whole shooting match, so to speak.
In Britain, you can receive the death penalty for killing the Queen, but not for your neighbour. What do you think of this, Ray?
Oh, I think I'd go, if I had some bad neighbours, I'd go and kill them all, then I'd kill the Queen.
Well, to me, the Queen is just a person like everybody else, Ray. That's what my view.
Yes.
I believe if you kill anybody, you should receive the death penalty, in my view.
Yes. I can't see why the Queen or the King should be singled out as being so special that somebody should receive a more severe punishment for hurting or killing this person as compared to another. Just because he or she is one of the high and mighty doesn't mean that life is any less precious to the other people, you know.
Well, that's what the Bible says, right?
Yeah, well, aren't I lucky I'm not a Christian?
Same here.
Let's have a look at some vocabulary that we've been talking about today. And you can download a copy of this directly off this CD if you want to review it at any time you like. Corporal is an adjective. It means relating to the body. And political is an adjective which means relating to government policy.
Execute is a verb. It means put to death. Execution is a noun, Ray.
Right, that's the act of putting somebody to death, yes. A deterrent, that's a noun. It's a disincentive. There's something that makes us not want to do something, such as, is the death penalty a deterrent to vicious crime?
Violent is an adjective, using forceful and harmful means to influence somebody.
Right, it usually, you know, if someone's going to be violent, of course, they end up, you know, punching, hitting or striking or stabbing somebody. to try to convince them to do something. Yes.
Gossip. Gossip is a noun, Ray, and it means speaking in a way that defames other people.
Right. Yes, it means like talking about somebody behind his back and saying, "Oh, you know that Simo guy, he's a real bloody idiot." This is, and you know what he did? He did blah blah blah. Sometimes gossip can be true, it can be not true, but it still defames. So therefore, it is actually a crime.
Humane. Humane is an adjective. It means to be kind, to be supposedly humane to another person and other animals.
Right. For example, a humane way of execution. Yeah. Okay. Closure is a noun. It means the feeling of finality, that something has finally come to an end and I can just get on with my life and not worry about it anymore.
Mentally disturbed. This is an adjective. It means that somebody is crazy or has a problem with the chemical mix in their brain. That means they're not quite the full quid. Maybe say, right?
Right. Yes. A sandwich short of a picnic, maybe.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. The executioner. That's a noun. This refers to a person. This is the person who is paid to end a prisoner's life. Like the guy who chops off your head or
Injects the needle.
Yeah.
Murder. Murder is a verb. It's action words, right? It's when you actually do the act of killing somebody.
Right.
The noun is the name of the action.
Right. So murder can be a noun as well. He
Yes.
committed murder.
Yes.
Right. Or
Yes.
he murdered somebody, if we want to use it as a verb. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. The Bible. This is a noun. This is the name of the Christian holy book that sets out what is supposed to be acceptable and unacceptable behaviour.
Victim. A victim is classified as a noun, and the victim is the person who is hurt or killed, Ray.
Right, yes, the person who harm has been done to, right. Alternative is an adjective, and it can be a noun. When it's used as an adjective, it refers to another choice. Is there any alternative to this road? Or here is an alternative. It can be used as a noun. It means another choice.
Rape. Rape can be a noun and a verb. Rape is the name of the action, and rape, the verb, is the act of doing rape. Forcing sexual activities on an unwilling partner.
Right, okay. Okay, well that's the end of our discussion on the Fly on the Wall series about capital punishment, and I hope you've had some really interesting things to make you think on this. Don't forget, if you want to contact us, here are our details. I'll leave them here for a little while whilst you can write down the details. And just a reminder that the questions and answers in this series, the Fly on the Wall series, are spontaneous. In other words, they're not been heavily rehearsed, and we expect to be able to put questions like this to most of our students in a classroom situation and get similar answers to what we got today. Thank you very much for your time, and a goodbye for now.